Okay, cool. So we're going.
All right.
All
Let's try
right.
these.
Tenaya, how you doing?
Very well. Thanks, Travis.
Cool. So you are Madame Fromage.
That is me, Madame Fromage. Yes.
Do you prefer Madame Fromage or Madame Fromage?
I answer to either.
Either one's cool.
Yeah, here in Philadelphia, I get Madame Fromage.
Right.
For jet setting around the globe, most people are like Madame Fromage.
Mm-hmm. But that translates to Mrs. Cheese, right?
Basically, yes. It was a name that I came up with as I was working on a series of blog names, and I
Mm-hmm.
almost called the blog the Cheese Log instead.
That's
Uh,
kind of good.
I know. At the last minute, though, I thought I love the theatrics of cheese, of like presenting a cheese board. And I just felt like it would be more compelling to be sort of this like cheese courtesan figure, somebody who is preparing boards and helping people fall in love with cheese,
Mm-hmm.
rather than a blogger who just listed, a log of cheeses that she was eating each week or each month.
Oh, so it was really just going to be like a log of the cheeses you have eaten.
That was my original plan because I was eating a lot
Uh-huh.
of cheese. I was learning about cheese. This was about 10 years ago. And I was taking a lot of notes in a notebook for all the cheeses I was eating, but I felt like it wasn't the best way to like remember my tasting notes. And because I was often eating cheese with other people, they were looking for a way to access, like, okay, what did we eat, 2 Thursdays ago? So I thought, all right, I'm going to put together a blog. I just wanted to kind of try out the software on Blogger at that time. And I just thought, I'm just going to throw up this blog and like no one is going to read it. It will just be a way for me to record my notes. And it has taken on a life of its own, which has been really, really fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the perfect way for it to happen when it just kind of like you do it just because you enjoy it and you're passionate about it, and then it turns into something bigger, right?
Exactly.
That's perfect. Such a great story, right?
Thanks.
So I guess how would you describe like what you do or like Madame Fromage to somebody now? Like what would your definition of it be, I guess?
Sure. I always joke that I'm a writer by day and a writing teacher, but at night I haunt cheese caves and stalk cheesemongers and cheesemakers. Essentially, my goal in life is to help people fall in love with the hunk of their dreams, Travis. And so I do a lot of sharing my favorite cheeses online and answering a lot of questions via Instagram and Twitter and Facebook for people who say, I'm putting together an anniversary cheese board, or I love this type of cheese, but I don't know where to start, or my boyfriend loves beer and I want to do a cheese board for him for his birthday. So I do a lot of that sort of like lactic consulting. And then I
That's good.
I host events and parties. I'm getting ready to throw a giant cheese ball this fall with all kinds of dairy dignitaries coming in from all over the world. We
Oh
built
my
the
gosh.
largest cheese board. It's almost like a potluck, but people come in ball gowns. They come in overalls. Anyone affiliated with the world of cheese gets to wear beads, and they get all kinds of just kudos and whatnot for being part of the cheese world of professional cheese. And I guess the last thing that I really enjoy doing is leading dairy centric cheese tours, mostly in Europe with a
Oh,
company called Cheese Journeys. I bet you didn't know that there are luxury cheese tours happening in this world.
I did not know that.
I do. So I just did a trip to France, to a particular region, with this company called Cheese Journeys, taking people to explore some of the great cheeses of the French Alps and the Jura region. And then I'm going to do a Gouda getaway in the spring, along with a Cheddar Odyssey.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So Travis, you just opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, wow. Something I'm realizing is that your naming of things is just great, and you have a lot of really good cheese puns.
I've been doing this long enough that, they're just these quick references that are now at my fingertips. And people are always sending me puns and things that they see on chalkboard signs outside of cheese shops. So,
Yeah,
I've seen
it's
that one.
inevitable.
It's inevitable. And it's very
Yeah.
fun to come up with cheese puns. You can just start going back and forth all day.
Wow. Okay, so what was you said you have what's the cheese ball again?
Okay, so the cheese ball is a party that I host every other year here in Philadelphia.
Okay.
It will be my fourth cheese ball. And just
Wow.
like it sounds, it is a ball. We have live music, people dance. Um, but the kind of crowning glory of the cheese ball is that we take a pool table and we cover it in butcher paper with like a big piece of wood over the top. And that
Okay.
becomes the nice cheese board. And so every guest that arrives gets a label and they bring a cheese and then they put their cheese out on the cheese board. And so that just becomes this ginormous canvas of amazing cheeses. And it will have everything on it from, joke cheeses like Cheese Whiz, or someone inevitably brings a stack of craft singles, but then
Okay.
very rare cheeses that no one has seen before. Like a few years ago, there was this beautiful cheese from Portugal made with sheep's milk and thistle rennet and wrapped with a little bit of lace. And when that went down on the board, it was like everybody who was a curd nerd just dove toward it and was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So it's a chance for people to try a lot of different kinds of cheeses that they never would have before. It's a little bit like being set loose in a cheese shop. And then we also have an area of condiments with like all kinds of ferments and jams and honeys. And then an area with like breads and crackers. And it's just one big nosh fest.
Wow. That sounds super fun. That's cool.
It's fun. And then we also do a raffle. It's always a benefit for someone in the cheese community. Like this time around, it's going to benefit two women who run a cheese CSA just outside of Philadelphia. So they literally deliver cheese boards that people can come and pick up at various locations around the city.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so the cheese ball will benefit a group called Collective Creamery, so they can expand. And we do a raffle also as part of the cheese ball. People donate things like goat skins and wheels of cheese and beautiful wooden cheese boards. Basically anything that sort of represents the dairy community.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's cool. I bet the photos of that huge cheese tray pool
Ours,
table are awesome, huh?
for some people, it's a little horrifying because it does become just mayhem. It's like little bamboo knives and cheese labels and, grapes and strawberries and crackers just kind of everywhere. But it is a wonderful, wonderful night. And a lot of local cheese makers come. And of course, cheesemongers who work at the local shops. They all come in as well. They get free entrance. And we just celebrate the awesome work that they do.
Yeah.
Philadelphia is a real cheese city. I don't know if Los Angeles, I know you've got some great cheese shops there, but Philadelphia, like it is really a mecca of cheese and there's a cool community here around it.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so let's say like I've, I don't have much experience with cheese. I grew up in a household where like if we bought sharp cheddar accidentally instead of mild cheddar, we would go back to the store and return it.
That's
Like,
what I'm hearing.
yeah, that's all we had. And like my mom just loves Velveeta. It was
And
there's
there's a
nothing.
place for all those cheeses, right?
Right, totally,
Yeah.
But like as I've kind of moved out and separated myself a little bit, I've wanted to discover some new cheeses, but it's just like I don't know where to go or what to do. I bought some like blueberry goat cheese from Trader Joe's once, and it was okay. I couldn't super get into it.
Yeah.
But so I guess if I'm just kind of looking, I think everybody loves cheese pretty much.
Yeah. I think so.
Usually, like no, when you hear like stuff that people don't like, no one ever says cheese.
Almost never. Sometimes they'll say, I have a hard time digesting it, but there's
Right.
even an answer
True.
for that.
Oh, what's the answer for that?
Well, if you are lactose sensitive, stay away from the soft cheeses.
Okay.
Or anything that would be like a cheddar or harder, like going up to say a Parmigiano, does not have any lactose anymore. It breaks down during the aging process.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So if you have lactose sensitive friends, I mean, it varies person to person for sure. But it doesn't mean that they necessarily can't or shouldn't eat cheese. It just means that they should probably stay in the harder cheese zones. So those manchegos are great for them. Aged Goudas, things like that, perfect. Pecorino, which is like a hard sheep's milk cheese, great with a martini. Also good for those folks.
Wow. Okay.
So, like one thing to know. I feel like if you're getting into the cheese lifestyle, Travis, there are a few things to know. One, since you mentioned blueberry goat cheese, if you're really a purist in the cheese world, one of the things you learn right away is like stay away from cheese with stuff in it.
Okay, I see.
Okay, because usually, and not in all cases, but often, stuff in it is used to mask poor quality cheese or sometimes poor quality milk. So if you want those blueberries, Travis, have them on the side and get like a nice log of goat cheese. Um,
Okay.
so all of your cheeses that have like, gosh, like right around the holidays, I'm starting to see that like Stilton with mango chunks and cranberries. I'm like, makes me want to run the other direction. Cheese with
Hmm.
peppermint sticks in it. No.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jeez.
Yeah, there's some wild stuff out there, and I think that the world of flavorings, to me, that's the fun part to do in terms of pairings on the side, like an interesting cranberry chutney, or use an herbed cracker with that manchego instead of having rosemary, on the outside. To me, I just like to enjoy the cheese. You should always taste the flavor of really good, clean milk, and the cheese should be the thing that's interesting. And then the pairings are things that you can bring to it. So that's number two. I'd say, like, especially if you're just getting into cheese, begin exploring just some like basic cheese types that are of high quality. And I would say, like, the other important thing is to go to a cheese shop and develop a relationship with someone at the counter who knows a lot and ask that person what is delicious right now, or what is in season right now, or what is the cheese you took home to your girlfriend last night or your last night. Because honestly, someone that works in the world of cheese is going to be your best guide. So
Hmm.
to go to a store that has a cheese counter with people behind it, where they're literally cutting cheeses right there in front of you, so you can see what a whole wheel looks like. You can have a taste and find out if it's something that you like or don't like. Maybe you can say, hey, I'm going to open a white wine tonight. I'm going to open some bubbly, or I'm going to open a porter. What should I have with it? And then let them guide you towards some interesting cheeses.
Okay.
I have my
Interesting.
go-to favorites that I recommend. If you're like, I need to do a cheese board tonight that everyone will love, sure. There's easy go-to favorites you can find in a lot of places. But I'm all for, if you want to build knowledge, it's kind of like if you get into wine, visit some wineries. Or if you get into beer, go to a good craft beer bar and like talk to that bartender, because they're going to tell you, this isn't so good right now, but here is like the best thing on tap. And like, that's always the information I want. I want to talk to somebody that like lives in that world and that directs me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess how would I find a cheese shop? Should I just go on Yelp and look for a cheese
Yeah,
shop? Google.
so I know in Los Angeles there are a number of good places. Gosh, I should have done a little research before we had this conversation, because there's some well-known cheese shops in LA. And so that's probably what I would do. Often when I travel, I Google the cheese shop in
Hmm.
the city I'm visiting, and I always make that my first stop on the ground. Like, I get off a plane, I go to the cheese shop, because I'm going to talk to someone behind the counter who's going to tell me about the local cheese scene. They're going to know some cool thing to do that night. They're going to know where like the cheesemongers and the chefs like to eat. And I use a cheese shop kind of like a tourist bureau.
Wow. Okay.
And, I'll always say, I'm looking for some souvenirs to take home. Like, what's local? What's interesting? And then I go back to my hotel and my Airbnb, and I have like fun cheeses to eat while I'm in that city. And I usually have some great recommendations for like live music, a good place to get a cocktail, because that's my other passion in life. And then like some great places to eat, either, delicious food, or a place to go for really great cheese boards.
Wow. Perfect.
Yeah.
So, you said cheesemonger a couple times. Is that just what you in the biz call someone who loves cheese?
Actually, no, it's the actual term for someone who sells cheese.
Oh, okay. I see.
Just like a fishmonger sells fish, a butcher is someone who works at a butcher counter. A cheese,
Okay.
it's like one of those words that people throw around, and even friends of mine will refer to me as a cheesemonger, and I don't ever say anything because that's okay. But a cheesemonger literally is a trained person behind a counter, and there are now actual certifications that you can get to be a certified cheese professional, or a certified,
Hmm.
just like becoming a sommelier.
Okay. Right.
Right. So now it's kind of a recent development, but in the last 3 to 5 years, there's now a whole exam that people behind cheese counters study for. They have to answer all kinds of questions about milk types, about aging, about care for cheese. And usually that means that they can come in at a higher pay rate.
Oh, okay. The higher, yeah.
For being a certified cheese professional.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow, well, that's cool. There's so much to it.
There's so much to it. It's such an interesting and thriving industry right now. When I first got into cheese, I would go to, I met some mongers at a local cheese shop who were just awesome. And they were these like tattooed guys with stretchers in their ears. And they were just so hardcore about cheese that I was like, I'm in your hands. And maybe became mentors. And at the time, it was like not many people wanted to work behind a cheese counter. And now I'm told by this same shop, like they get so many applications for people who want to work at the cheese counter that they don't know what to do. It's sort of, had that hipster revival in the same way that craft beer or third wave coffee has. Suddenly, cheese school, and everybody with tattoos and piercings wants to work behind the cheese counter, which is awesome because it means that there's like so many knowledgeable people. There's even in New York and in, I believe, San Francisco, so it's on two coasts, a big cheesemonger competition every year where they compete for like who can break down a Parmesan the fastest and who can wrap the best and who can come up with the most interesting pairings. It's called the Cheese Invitational. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
The Cheese Invitational, that's good.
Yeah, so it's kind of like going to a wrestling match, but for people who work in cheese. So it's a deep scene, like any scene. It's once you start digging, you're like, whoa, all right, there's really a crew of nerds here, and it's a lot of fun.
So do most cities have like a cheese scene that you can kind of get into?
Well, I would say so. Some are more developed than others. Like I have a friend flying in for the cheese ball. She's from Chicago. She's also a cheese blogger out there. She goes by the name of Cheese Sex Death on Instagram. She's got and she tells me that the Philadelphia scene is truly unique. Because we really get together and we have a cheese gang with a hashtag and we have like our own like a little biker bar of cheese where we all hang out.
Nice.
There's nothing quite like that in Chicago. But I go to Chicago and I can go to a couple of great cheese counters. There's definitely cool people and cool makers around the area. I was just in Seattle and I got taken around by someone I know off of Instagram who used to work at the Whole Foods cheese counter, and we went to all of her favorite cheese shops and stops and a local farm, and we ate like the world's best butter and, and we had a great old time. So I feel like, yeah, like the cheese scene is large and it's also very much online with Facebook groups and a lot of cheese people on Instagram. I mean, any morning I wake up and I am like peering into cheese caves, in the Pyrenees or in Portugal, or up in Maine, and I'm like, oh my God, look at those awesome cheeses aging. Those are the sorts of things I get pretty excited about.
Yeah.
So often when I travel, I do a lot of like Instagram connecting. And so I'll meet someone like, hey, where can we meet up and have a cheese board? Or, hey, I see your farm is not too far outside of Portland, Maine. Can I pop in and do some posts and hang out for a little bit? And the thing about the cheese world is that the people in it are so freaking nice. Good. Like often people are into cheese because they love animals, they like dairy, they like interesting foods, and so it's a great world to connect and be a part of.
Perfect. Yeah, I like how you like. In my world, at least, it's like we'll meet up and have a cup of coffee, but in your world, it's we'll meet up and have a cheese board.
It's so true. In fact, I've got a friend of mine who works at a publication and she's coming through Philly today, and so she texted me and she's like, hey, where can we meet for like half an hour at a cheese board? So at 5:00 I'm take her to my favorite bar where there's a local cheese board and local spirits, and she's someone who I've maybe met twice, but like when she comes to Philly, she wants to eat cheese, she calls me, and when I go to New York and I want to eat cheese, I call her. So and I don't think I would probably know this person in any other way. not if connected, in any other way.
Right.
But anyway, she's awesome. So it'd be really fun to see her.
Cool. So if I can, do you ever go to just like a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods or a normal grocery store for cheese?
Sure do. Just,
Okay.
just like any other normal person.
Right.
But I mean, okay, if there's something special that I want, like yesterday, I went to my favorite cheese counter because I had a cocktail I really wanted to pair with cheese. And the mongers down there know me, and I was like, I'm gonna come in with a little thermos of these special old fashions I'm making, and I'm looking for just the right cheese. And so I come in, I got my thermos, I pour these like little thimbles full of this old fashioned, and then we taste through 6 cheeses to see which one pairs the best. And I'm doing this for a special event. Anyway, so for that kind of experience, which is what I love doing, I really love going to like a cheese counter, like I said. But yeah, say, say I'm just going on a picnic, or I'm going camping, I'm going to dash into Whole Foods, I'm going to dash into Trader Joe's for some cheese, or out here we have Wegmans, another good kind of retailer with cheese. My go-to for places like that is always the harder cheeses, because a lot of stuff there is shrink wrapped, which is my favorite way of buying cheese, because you don't know how long it's been sitting there.
Right.
Cheese is full of living enzymes, so the longer it sits there, the more those enzymes kind of like lose their energy and give the cheese a pretty flat taste. So I can always taste a cheese that's been sitting in plastic too long. First of all, it tastes like plastic, and it doesn't have any like sparkle or like interesting flavor notes that like pop out. Often it tastes a little bit like one note or flat. So that's especially the case for like soft cheeses. So if I see a hunk of brie and it's all wrapped tightly in saran wrap, no, I'm just not going to go there. Like, do not, sometimes it's getting a little slimy under the wrapping. I want to buy something like that fresh, or like a whole little wheel in a box or something like that. But your harder cheeses, your manchegos, your cheddars, you mentioned cheddars earlier. Your hard cheeses are often, fine to pick up. And often a place like, Trader Joe's is buying in bulk. And so you get interesting things that might not be at other cheese shops, or you might get a great discount on something. Not that I'm always looking for discount cheese, because I kind of feel like you get what you pay for. Yeah, I'm happy to pop in and see what they have. And usually I'll grab a cheddar or sheep's milk cheese or something like that.
Okay. That's good to hear that you can still go just make a quick trip and get it, The
thing to know about cheese is that there's like big cheese and little cheese. And big cheese is like your industrial manufactured cheese, like made in a factory. It's fine, right? It's going to get the job done. Put on a cracker or a sandwich or whatnot. It's a good snacker. But I like little cheese. I love the cheese that's made often by one person who's raising their own animals and really trying to make a traditional style of cheese like you might find in Europe. Usually those are really fabulous and interesting. Kind of like going to the small world of craft beer. Like kind of the smaller you go, the more interesting flavors you're going to find, and the better the stories too. Right? I mean, you can go for big name beer, but you're going to get, what you're going to get. It's always going to taste the same. Whereas those little makers, those gypsy brewers and whatnot, they're always tweaking things and making new things, and it's always a little different. And so it's that rich experience. So that's why I always say I love little cheese. I love things that are handmade. I want something from that single person in Vermont or that one lady in Maine. To me, that's more exciting to source and eat, but it's not always convenient.
Yeah, totally. There's kind of like the time and place for both different things.
Absolutely. It's the difference between like getting the Hershey bar because you just want some chocolate and you want it now.
Yeah,
or
totally.
A specialty food store and pining over that $10 bar where you know it's going to be incredible. Well, you don't always have the time to do that. Sometimes you don't have the money for it. So, I like to play both sides of the fence. I always like to know what's happening like in the more, like I said, industrial or specialty cheeses that maybe are made in large quantities. But I really love to seek out the little stuff because that's where you get like the delicious weirdness and a lot of really wonderful people. And I really love to support family farms and people who have a dream, that one, that little micro entrepreneur that has left their desk job in New York to open their own little creamery in Pennsylvania. Like, I love those stories, and I love finding those people and eating their cheeses.
Right. So are there people like similar to, like I know a few people who brew their own beer just like in their garage. Is that something that kind of goes on with the cheese world? Is that what people do too?
Totally.
Yeah.
There's a whole world of urban cheese making.
Okay.
I have 2 friends here who consider themselves urban cheesemakers. One's in my neighborhood, and he ages stuff in his basement. And he's a pretty legit guy. He really knows what he's doing. He has sold a lot of retailed a lot of cheese and sold cheese forms and stuff like that in the industry. So he's always messing around and making interesting stuff. So he'll take the local gin and he'll make a batch of cheese and wash it with the local gin and then have people over to taste it, that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's cool.
And then there's a guy who lives just on the city limits. He's a pediatrician by day, would you believe it, who has a licensed cheesemaking facility in his basement that he built.
Whoa.
And yeah, he's Argentinian and he loves cheese. And, he's like, I'm a pediatrician by day, but I love food. I love being in the kitchen. He loves cheese. So he taught himself how to become a cheesemaker. And he makes several local cheeses for different restaurants now. He's an awesome guy. It's called Marion Park Cheese.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. If he's making it for a restaurant, he's making like a decent amount of cheese, huh?
He only gets cheese he gets raw milk 1 day a week brought in from a yogurt company. So they make a delivery of their yogurt and they also bring him milk. Oh. He, makes cheese with it that 1 day a week. So his supply is not large, but he sells at some local markets and local restaurants. You would not be able to find Marion Park cheese outside of Philadelphia.
Right.
That's all right. There are beers that are only brewed here and coffees that are only roasted here too. So it's part of like coming to Philly or anywhere and having that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So he does not want to become a cheesemaker by his profession. He's like a hobbyist dad who loves coming to like cheese events with his new cheese. And I mean, there's since there's so much science that goes into cheese, it attracts a lot of deep nerds.
I can appreciate that.
Scientific backgrounds and and like you said, it's just like the world of home brewing. Like somebody starts making a little ricotta on their stove and then they're like, let me stretch some mozzarella, and then it usually goes to like, let me make a little brie, and then they just take off.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I can totally see that.
Yeah, and there's great books out there now about how to make cheese in your own home kitchen. So I've known some people who now are pretty well-known cheesemakers, and they just started at the stove,
Wow, that's cool. So I don't know, maybe it's totally different for every type of cheese, but what's sort of the general process to make cheese? Like, how is it made?
I mean, what's amazing about cheese is it's really only 3 ingredients. It's milk. It's something that acidifies the milk or makes the milk curdle, so you have curds and whey.
Okay.
And so you drain off all that liquid. You're left with these solids, and that is the basis of cheese. Okay, so for just those 2 things. As an acidifier, you can use, for example, vinegar or lemon juice if you're making ricotta. Then there's always salt. Like almost all cheese is salted. And then there are cultures that go into different styles of cheese. So if you want to make a cheddar, you would use a particular kind of culture. If you wanted to make a Gouda, you would use a different culture. So those are bacterial cultures that create certain flavors.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so that's the basic building block. Almost all cheese, you go into any cheese company or cheese factory, you see like vats of milk. You see that get acidified, so the milk or the whey separates from the curds. They take the curds and they pack them into forms, so wheels.
Right.
And some cheeses are huge and some cheeses are tiny, so that affects the texture and things like flavor. But it's not a simple process, but it's shocking how many different cheeses you can make using so few ingredients.
Right.
Everything is technique, so the skill of the cheesemaker, and everything really kind of stems from the quality of the milk. And that all goes into like, what are those animals eating?
Okay.
So I was just in the French Alps, for example, and those are some of the best, most flavorful cheeses because the meadow pastures where the cows graze have so many different kinds of plants. Like one cheesemaker we visited high in the Alps said, the reason my cheese is so good is because I have 300 different kinds of plants growing in the meadows where my cows graze. So you compare a cheese from there compared to maybe a cheese made in Pennsylvania where maybe the animals are eating 5 different kinds of plants or just 2 different kinds of grass, right? They're not getting the variety of the diet that builds flavor. Cheese. So a lot of the flavor that comes through in great cheeses that are like prize winners, cheeses that people pay a lot of money for, come from animals raised on these incredible pastures. So a lot of like French cheeses are prized because the animals, are grazing these lush valleys. or in the Alps, supposedly the higher the animals get up in the mountains, the better the pastures because they're more pristine. There's no pollutants up there.
Oh, okay.
He has been in there tinkering and raising different crops. It's just wild, wild nature. So you get all kinds of wildflowers and berries and little bushes, and the animals are eating those things. And so the milk up there is like the milk of the gods.
Wow. Have you tried like that kind of just the milk when it's not just cheese?
Yeah, I mean, milk varies different times of year, just as like, different plants are coming up at different times of year. So like spring milk will taste different from fall milk based on, especially if those animals are outside eating.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, you can, especially if you're drinking unpasteurized milk, like those mountain milks. I mean, those milks, there's nothing like them. You're tasting like floral notes and grasses and anything that the animals are eating really sometimes will come through, even like a little bit of mint. Like farmers can tell you like, I get a little mint, there's a little clover in there, maybe a little lavender. You do get those little nuances coming through in the milk.
Wow, that's cool. I really want to try that. That sounds fun. That sounds awesome.
Actually, I went to this amazing aging cave where they store the wheels of cheese by elevation. So they literally know, which pastures, which part of the mountain each cheese comes from. And buyers from cheese shops in Europe will come in and choose kind of by elevation, like how many meters high do they want that Comte to come from. It is so freaking interesting. You can't believe it.
Yeah. That's cool. So I guess is there kind of like a cheese capital, like, or is it just everywhere?
Question. I used to always think it was France because France, has incredible cheeses and they consider themselves, like the land of cheese. Then you go to Italy, and Italy has incredible cheeses. Then I started going to England to research cheddar. Oh my gosh, the cheeses of England are like there's such hidden gems. I feel like nobody realizes how many great cheeses come out of England. Spain, you get great sheep's milk cheese. So I feel like every country has distinct cheeses that they make. So there's not, any French person would say that France was the capital of cheese, but we have the most varieties.
Okay.
I would say that. But right now, for example, there's a World Cheese Awards happening in Norway. And there's over 3,000 cheeses from around the world that have been submitted. And you've got cheeses coming in from India, cheeses coming in from Japan, like cheeses wrapped in, cherry leaves and things like that. I mean, there's amazing cheeses being made everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be fun to be a judge for that, huh?
Oh my gosh, that's my dream.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so you would have to qualify to be a judge for that, surely, right?
I don't work in the industry. I always feel like I kind of work on the periphery. Maybe one day I'll be a cheese judge. But mostly it tends to be people who work in cheese shops and are like real veterans of the trade.
I see.
Or they're buyers for, East Coast Whole Foods, or some of my friends here in Philadelphia who have been cheesemongers for like 20 years. They'll fly out to the different cheese awards and judge. And it's really fascinating to talk to them because they're eating everything blind. They have no idea what they're tasting. And then they have to do fill out elaborate grading sheets about the flavor notes, the texture. They can recognize certain flaws in cheese. Cheese that has holes in it, those holes are called eyes.
Okay.
A cheese without holes is known as a blind cheese.
Right, naturally.
Cheese should not have holes, but if it has holes, then that would be a demerit. Those are the sorts of things that I probably don't know enough about to be a cheese judge, but there's all kinds of cool terminology for cheese flaws that I've just started learning about.
So what makes it, so cheese shouldn't have holes? Is that what you said?
There are only certain styles that should have holes. Like Emmentaler is a cheese from Switzerland that does have big holes, and it's part of this style. So it kind of depends on the recipe. But if you got, say, a brie and it had big holes in it, it would seem strange to you, right? Because you don't think of brie as a cheese that has big holes. So the holes come from gas bubbles. It would mean there was some sort of a problem during the cheese make, and cheese is probably no good and would be disqualified.
Okay, I see.
cheese with flaws is always bad, but there are certain things, just like if you look at a loaf of bread, a baker could tell you, this is a little under-risen, or they didn't knead it long enough. Cheese judges can tell when there's something that's not gone right with the recipe.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. There's kind of like standards that you would kind of want to
Exactly.
adhere to or follow, I guess.
Exactly. Like a pita bread should be fluffy, and have air in the middle. And if it doesn't, that would be considered a flaw.
Right.
But if a baguette has tons of huge holes in it, it's annoying because everything falls through it, right? And so, that's a flaw. So things like that. It's the same for the world of cheese. Once you really get to know it, then you know what the different styles of cheese should look like and taste like. And even though there's lots of variations, certain things, certain accidents, shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. So do you know anything about because this, I guess, when did cheese first come into the world? Because it has to be made, right? It's not just like milk or something that kind of comes out of an animal. Do you know when this happened or who figured it out?
I mean, it seems like there's always articles coming about where cheese is even older than we thought. Like somebody found remains of ricotta on the inside of an urn. But the sort of story has always been, at least that I've heard, is that probably there was a shepherd who put some milk into the sack of the stomach. Basically, they would use the stomach lining of a goat or a calf to carry water, and so they would have put some milk in there, and the enzymes on the inside of that pouch would have caused the milk to curdle. And
okay.
Discovered whoa, okay, milk can break down and have these chunky particles, and then if you take those chunky particles and you shape them, and then you add salt, you can preserve milk. So at some points, probably some early chef discovered that you could preserve cheese by straining out all of the whey or the water.
Mm-hmm. That must have been kind of weird to figure out. But yeah, I guess if he was trying to kind of preserve milk, that was maybe his goal when he was doing that, that makes sense why it kind of happened, I guess.
It probably happened quite by accident, and then the realization was, hey, this makes milk last longer. Because before refrigeration, if you had a lot of milk, it was what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so cheese was an early way of dealing with milk prior to refrigeration, and that's why cheese caves existed. It's because people realized if you store cheese in a cool place, it lasts longer, and also some cool things happen to the rind.
Okay.
So modern day cheese caves are really designed to have the humidity and low temperature of an actual earthen cave.
Right.
Which would have been the first place that early humans would have stored cheeses.
Yeah. So I could just picture him holding up a piece of cheese being this milk is a year old,
Right.
Selling his old milk that lasts forever or something.
Right. Well, you think of feta. Feta is also a cool way that cheese has been preserved over time because it's technically stored in brine, like seawater. And so feta, it's soft, it's in a cake, but you can keep that feta for a long time because you have it in seawater, which, is inhibiting any additional molds or bacterial growth. So that was another way that cheese was preserved.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, really interesting.
So having it in seawater prevents mold or other things growing on it?
Yeah, essentially it's like pickling something. You're taking a cake of cheese, putting it in a brine bath.
I see. Okay.
To keep stuff from growing on top of it. Yeah. I mean, you could also store cheese in oils. So sometimes you'll see little cakes of goat cheese in jars of oil with herbs and stuff. That's another way to preserve fresh cheese.
Right. Man, it's crazy. There's so much stuff.
Yeah, I know. There's so much to know.
Yeah. So is it, I don't know. I feel like mainly I see kind of just cheddar and stuff is made using cow's milk. Is that right?
Yeah, you can make cheddar from goat's or sheep's milk though too. Cheddaring is actually a process, and what's really cool about cheddar, it's one of the most complicated cheeses to make because they take the curds once you've siphoned off all the liquids, and you have these squiggly looking curds that kind of look like styrofoam peanuts, and they run them through a sausage grinder essentially. So a cheddar Literally, they crank it through, and it creates all these little crumbly bits, and then they pack those into these large drums. So if you've ever noticed when you eat cheddar, it kind of falls apart on the tongue. It's creamy, but it's also crumbly.
Okay.
Next time you eat cheddar, take a look, and you'll notice it is made of all of these like little packed rice-sized granules. And the British developed that, and they loved a biscuit crumbly cheddar. So a cheddar that's creamy but that like breaks apart on the tongue. And that doesn't happen when you eat, say, like an Alpine cheese like Gruyere, which is waxy and perfect and very elastic, and in no way crumbles on the tongue.
Right.
So cheddaring, that milling process, creates this unique texture. It's subtle, but you'll notice like some of the more traditional styles of cheddar, or even like very aged cheddars, you can really see those individual grains. Or if you go to use your knife on it, some of it will crumble, and that's supposed to happen. That is part of that style.
Okay, I see. So that's like the process to make it as cheddar.
Yes, and that's cheddar. One of the things that make cheddar a cheddar.
Okay, so. But I mean, I guess what I was curious is like if I don't know, have they made cheese basically out of every animal milk?
Even breast milk.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
People ask about that all the time. Yeah, and I mean, you can really make cheese out of any kind of milk. You know, buffalo mozzarella, that is water buffalo milk. There are camel's milk cheeses in the Middle East. Yeah, basically any milk, as far as I know. I mean, I don't know about whales and things like that, but you know, your major milks would be your goat, your sheep, your cow, and they all have, you know, like different ratios of proteins and butter fats. So like your goat's milk is the lightest cheese. It's like if you're going to midnight snack, you know, make it a goat's cheese because it's light. If you want something rich and creamy that pairs well with red wine, go for a sheep's milk cheese.
Okay.
A lot of fat, good fat, I always think. And it holds up well to like tannic or to tannins and things like that in wines or strong flavors. Cow's milk is the most prevalent, obviously. And so, you know, most cheeses are made from cow's milk. They're big milk producers in the way that goats and sheep simply are not.
Okay. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. What is Chevre cheese?
Good question. It's simply goat cheese. In France, like that is the word for goat. In the US, we think of Chevre just as a fresh, soft goat's milk cheese. So essentially the goat milk equivalent of a cream cheese.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, because I'll see that all the time, but I didn't know exactly.
It's quick to make. It's not that different from like making ricotta or something like that. Like you can eat it the day it's made. Whereas your aged goat cheeses, you know, take longer and require a little bit more labor.
Mm-hmm. So I guess is it just the process of how you make the difference between a soft cheese and a hard cheese? Yeah. Is that the difference really? Is the process?
The difference is usually the hard cheeses have more of the moisture pressed out. They'll actually have weights that they'll put on those cheeses to expel the whey. Also, it's aging. So the longer a cheese sits around, the more water evaporates, the harder it gets. And you can have cheeses that are aged, you know, 2 and 3 years. Or in the case of cheddar, you've got cheddars that have been aged even like 10, 15 years.
Whoa.
And flavors really develop over that aging time. It's a very complex process. There's a whole kind of art of aging cheese called affinage. It's like the maturation of cheese. So think of like you make a fresh cheese and then like you send it off to a nursery where it goes onto a shelf and somebody in a white lab coat cares for it and turns it and maybe like brushes it if there's like weird things growing, or like salts it, or they might rub it with olive oil or rub it with wine. You can use all of these sort of exterior washes to help different flavors develop and to help a rind develop.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of cool things going on in the rind. Like I love cheese rinds. I love talking about them because a lot of people are afraid of them, but also because there's flavor in the rinds. And like, yeah, give me a wild rind, and I am like so excited to start talking.
Wow. Okay. So what is a rind exactly? It just kind of coats the cheese?
It's just the exterior of an aged cheese.
Okay.
So like your Chevre, like you said, there's no rind. right? You get it in a tub, in a little tube or whatever. There's no rind. But even your cheddar probably had a rind of some sort. Your manchego has usually that sort of dark rind that has like basket striations on it. Your bries, your camemberts, they have that like fluffy white rind. That's class of cheeses called bloomy cheeses because that rind literally blooms like a dandelion and has like these like little fluffy tufts that grow on it, and then a person will pat those tufts down and that forms that fuzzy, white rind. Rinds are really interesting. Or you find cheeses where, for example, they'll create a rind by packing grape must or barley malt around the outside, or they'll pack a cheese in hay to kind of have the flavors of the hay infuse into the rind and infuse into the cheese. So I think of the rind as it's both a way of kind of creating a natural packaging around a cheese, but also it builds flavor if you kind of put additional things on the outside.
Okay, so are you supposed to generally eat the rind or no?
My go-to response is always like, if it appeals to you, eat the rind. If it doesn't appeal to you, don't eat it.
Okay.
If it's me and I'm at a party and I'm with other cheese people, there will not be a single rind left at the end of the night, unless it's, say, like a piece of wax.
Okay, right.
I go to a lot of parties where somebody comes along and like scoops all the goop out of the brie and leaves the little white rinds hanging there on the plate. To me, that's the best part of a brie or camembert because often the rind holds the most flavor.
Okay.
That's because the cheese it ages from the outside in. And so there's usually the least flavor right in the very center. Also, those fluffy white rinds usually taste a little bit like black pepper. They have sort of an interesting taste on their own. They're very good toasted in the toaster oven on a piece of baguette and then smeared with a little honey on top. I love like just a little rind, a little toasted rind. Or on a hard cheese, you'll toast those rinds in the oven and it tastes a little bit like bacon.
Ooh.
So, like, Travis, never throw out your rinds unless it's made of wax. Usually it's the best part. And I recently interviewed a cheese scientist who told me that the most calcium is in the rind. Because calcium migrates to the exterior of a cheese during the aging process. So if the full health benefits of a cheese, man, eat those rinds.
You got to eat them.
Got to eat them. Stop calcium pills and just eat the cheese rinds.
Dang, man, this is cool. So now I'm curious about, you talk a lot about pairings, right? Like stuff to go with cheese. Yeah. That's a pretty big part of it generally, right?
Oh, it's so fun to pair cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, with beer, with wine, with hard cider, with tea, even like, fresh juices, things like that. I would say my pairing advice is always, if you want to start pairing and playing with cheese, start with beer or start with like tea. Those are really fun things to play with. Beer because it's bubbly, kind of cleanses your palate between bites. You can buy a 6-pack and of different beers and a few different cheeses and mix and match and have the time of your life. The hardest thing to pair with cheese is really red wine. Everyone wants to open a bottle of like a big bold red and eat cheese with it. And usually the red wine is so bold and there's so many tannins that it just kills the taste of the cheeses on the board. So unless you really know what you're doing, I always say steer clear of the red wine. Crack some beer, crack something sparkly like a champagne or a cava or a prosecco because bubbles love fat, so they're very good with cheese. Beer's great. I love playing around with tea because a friend of mine's a tea expert, and when we started playing around together, we realized that there's a lot of common flavors between tea and cheese. So, for example, your green teas taste really grassy. The building block of cheese is grass because that's what
right.
So, like a green tea and Chevre, which you asked me about, that's a great pairing. Essentia green tea and some fresh goat cheese in the morning. Oh my gosh. It's beauty itself. Or a black tea, like if you like an Irish breakfast tea or something like that, is wonderful with a cheddar in the afternoon. Or a Gouda, because you get these sort of malty notes in a black tea that are nice with cheeses that have a little bit of sweet saltiness and a little bit of tang.
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk pairings all day, but those are like some of my go-tos. If I'm having people over and I want to wow them a little bit, I'll open some interesting beers. I'll make some cocktails to because I love spirits and cheese.
Mm-hmm.
In the afternoon, I'll be like, let's open some kombucha, or let's make a couple little pots of tea and see what goes together.
Whoa, cool. So is
Yeah.
that something that if you take, I don't know, if you take like you did, where you take like a beer or something to a cheese shop, they can help you kind of find something that would go with that?
That's the best. Usually people who work in cheese shops, they are food lovers and they're in there all day thinking of pairings. So
Yeah.
there's nothing more fun than either saying like, I love this cheese, what beer would go with it? Or I'm going to drink a milk stout tonight, or I'm going to drink this Pilsner, or I'm going to, I have this weird apricot sour, and ask them to help you find the right cheese. And it is, I would say 9 times out of 10, I've just gotten a great pairing from a recommendation from a cheesemonger.
Yeah. Man, that sounds fun. I really want to get into this and try this.
Okay, let me just give you a pairing assignment, Travis. You're in California.
Okay.
Okay, you are living in the home of one of my favorite California cheeses.
Ooh.
Okay, it's called Red Hawk.
Red Hawk.
Red Hawk.
Okay.
It's made by Cowgirl Creamery. It's 2 women, and they're right there in I believe Point Reyes. And Red Hawk is a cheese you should be able to find at like any Whole Foods or any good cheese counter.
Oh.
Very famous cheese in the cheese world. The cool thing about Red Hawk is that it has this really unique peanutty finish. All right, so it's very creamy. It's a triple cream. It has a notes to me of a peanut butter sandwich if it was made on like toasted brioche bread.
Oh, okay.
So let me put that in your mind. Now go and get a chocolate stout.
Uh-huh.
And you're eating a Snickers bar.
Wow.
It's delicious. So Red Hawk and a chocolate stout is like one of the most magical pairings. And that was taught to me by one of the cheesemongers who I really love, who works at DeBruno Brothers here in Philadelphia. It was like one of the first pairings I had where I went, oh my gosh, I get it. I get it why you guys working here and talk cheese all day.
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds good. I think I even have a chocolate stout in the fridge right now.
That's awesome. That is a
I'm
fun
halfway there.
chocolate stout with Red Hawk is called a washed rind cheese, so it's kind of a sticky, washed, funky exterior. So washed rind cheeses and stouts are good. So are blues. So if you like blue cheese,
Okay, yeah.
for a sort of sweet, salty blue, it'll probably be great with the chocolate stout as well.
Cool. Dang, okay, yeah. I'm excited. I'm gonna try that for sure. Red Hawk, Cowgirl Creamery.
Message me and let me know what you think, because once you get into the world of pairings, it's just a blast.
Yeah, cool. Man, well, this is great. Let me see. I think we talked about everything.
Or eat, Travis.
What's that?
Is there anything else you really like to drink or eat that could be a cheese pairing?
I mean, I'm big into like darker beers, like kind of a Guinness kind of style.
Yeah.
Like stouts, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. Also really good with, your cheddars, your blue cheeses. You can go for like bold flavors with something like a Guinness or a stout. That's the world of cheese pairing I love to play in.
Yeah.
Like get yourself a Stilton or something like that. Stilton is a blue cheese. It has like some leather notes.
Okay. Leather notes. Wow.
Oh yeah. I mean, the vocabulary around cheese is so much fun to talk about because wine or beer or coffee, there are all these flavor notes. And once you kind of know what flavor notes to look for, it helps you understand, how to pair.
Mm-hmm. So are you ever making like grilled cheeses or anything like that?
Oh, sure. I love doing, like a grilled cheese sandwich with, I love around this time of year to do like a blue cheese with some pears and maybe some caramelized onions, and then crack into that Guinness or some sort of delicious salt. Yeah, I mean,
gosh, that sounds so good.
That's a great Saturday night, or the start of a great Saturday night.
Yeah. This is tough because we're just talking about this like through the internet, and we can't taste it right now.
I got a fridge full of cheese. It's really too bad you're not right here.
Yeah, I know. Gosh, it makes me want to. I'm gonna go to a cheese shop this weekend.
Yes, fantastic. I'll email you some of the cheese shops that are in Los Angeles because I know you.
Perfect.
Ones. Yeah.
That would be perfect. That would be so awesome.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else that we should talk about? Anything that you have that I wouldn't even think to ask?
No, I guess the last thing I would say is that people who are curious to learn more, I have a blog. It's madamefromageblog.com. And I also have a book out about cheese called DeBruno Brothers House of Cheese, which includes beer and wine pairings for 170 different cheeses. And I've also just written 3 cocktail books for the last 4 years. And there's a lot of food and cheese pairings in those as well.
Wow, perfect. So can we just find those all on your website?
Mine is on my website or on Amazon or any bookseller or any major online site.
Cool. And then, I want to go through and try some of your pairings that you suggest. That seems awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually working on a new book right now, which will be called The Cheese Lover's Guide to the Galaxy. And it's going to have all kinds of far out cheeses and far out pairings. So it's sort of like the next level.
Wow. Great name, by the way. Perfect.
Thank you. Well, Travis,
so
awesome talking to you. Oh, when is that going to come out? Is that
do you know when that's? Yeah.
Oh gosh, not until spring 2020.
Oh man, we gotta wait.
Yeah, it's a ways up. It's what I was working on right before you called.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, I'll be buying it.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk tonight. It was awesome.
Thanks for having me on Curiosityness. Is that what it's called? Yes, Curiosity.
That's what it's called. Yes, I think so. Probably.
Okay. Anyway.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so much to share. It was awesome talking to you. Thank you.
You too. And go in peace, and may you find the hunk of your dreams.
Find the hunk of my dreams. Cool. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cool.
Bye, Travis.